Boom. Oh, I get a little voice now on Zoom that says recording in progress. Today is Sunday, June 6th, 2021, and you are listening over the sound of cicadas or watching with torches in the background the latest issue of Forward Maryland. From a very noisy location in Columbia, I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Jason Booms, reporting from inside where the decibel level is slightly lower.
Jason, I have to let you know that by August, I am going to be reinstated as the third baseman of the Baltimore Orioles.
Oh, congratulations.
Things have been put in place legally that will make me the third baseman of the Baltimore Orioles, and I will be so for the foreseeable future. What say you?
Well, I guess my first question is this. How'd you get the nod over Brooks Robinson?
He's 81.
Well played.
I'm not sure I would get the nod over Leo Gomez at this point, aka one of the Three Stooges who led us to the '83 title.
Oh God!
So we are back this evening after a slight hiatus, and bring to you three zesty topics, as is our one. First off, and I'll say this in John McLaughlin voice, Jason. Issue 1: the race is joined, or the race has yet to be joined. So the last several weeks have seen a large influx of candidates for governor. And it's safe to say that there is, on at least on the Democratic side, a fairly hearty first and second tier of candidates forming or have formed, and at least a couple of major candidates, one announced, one not so announced, in the mix on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, former Attorney General and candidate for governor Doug Gansler announced his intention to run for governor, joining Comptroller Peter Franchot, former Prince George's County executive and also former candidate for governor. Rush Baker from Prince George's County looks to be getting into the race, pretty much all but formally announced. They pretend to be soon to be joined by former DNC chair and Montgomery County councilman and U.S. Department of Labor Secretary Tom Perez, who had been thought of as a potential 6th district congressional candidate until David Trone announced his reelection. And then we certainly have a second tier of candidates, John King, the former U.S. Education Secretary, Ashwani Jain, another Wes Moore, and I know I am leaving out the name of a person who I know is running for governor, but I cannot remember that person's name except that I know that they have announced.
Mike Rosenbaum.
Yes, I wanted to say David Brent, but that was actually Ricky Gervais's character in the UK version of The Office, so I knew that wasn't it. And then on the Republican side, former Department of Labor Secretary, delegate from Frederick County, and current Commerce Secretary Kelly Schultz has announced her intention to run. And there's a lot of speculation that former Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele is going to enter the race. Jason, let's take the Democratic side first because they're just so damn interesting. What do you make of the field so far?
Well, I guess I'll first bang the drum on the fact that there are no women currently running in the Democratic field for governor, which seems like a massive hole as far as the field is concerned. I know there's some speculation, obviously, that particularly on the D side, that a number of the lieutenant, governor. The running mates will be women candidates, but it does appear to be a field that's calling out for someone like an Angela Alsobrooks, for example, that has the credentials to run statewide. So in that regard, the field feels incomplete, I guess is where I'm going with all of this. I know it's rather full, but it still feels as though that there's there's some voices from whom we haven't seen yet.
I would agree, and I appreciate your suggestion of Angela also Brooks, because my question was going to be, well, what women do you got, Jason? But I will also postulate this: what female candidates are there? For at least to run for governor. The only one that springs to mind would be the retiring Frederick County executive, Jan Gardner. Mm-hmm. We as a state, this has been talked about before, at least on this podcast. We're not doing great things in terms of electing our Democratic women. There has never been a female Democrat elected statewide. Except for Kathleen Kennedy Townsend as lieutenant governor on Glendenning's ticket. And there's never been a female Republican elected to a statewide office. So, the Democratic bench in terms of lifting female candidates up through the statewide office is absurdly thin. And when you get to lieutenant governor candidates, I think we have maybe not one, but two here in our very own county of Howard. We have Delegate Courtney Watson, Senator Katie Hester, who are probably both going to be drawn into much more conservative districts in District 9. Kathy Klausmeyer, the state senator from Baltimore County, and there could be others. But it's kind of sad when we think of possible, female candidates who could lead the ticket, and we come up with one.
Mm-hmm. It is a sad commentary, although one of them, a former woman who ran for governor, running for office this time around in the 1st Congressional District, Heather Mazier, she was in the news a little bit recently as Doug Gansler endorsed her candidacy, which I think is sort of an interesting move on Gansler's part, and perhaps a recalibration of where the Democratic Party is, or perhaps they had a closer friendship than I possibly thought in terms of bonding from their previous run.
So, given the current field and the candidates I enumerated, where do you think the strengths lie? If I may dare a venture a guess, you seem less than fully enthused.
That's positive. Yeah, I'd say that's a good way of phrasing it. Yeah, I mean, I will say I think John King is interesting. I think that he's second tier because he's never sought elective office before, at least not in the state of Maryland, to the best of my knowledge. So I think he's got potential, but I don't think there's a clear candidate, sort of the left in the field. So in that regard, I don't mind waiting to see how the race shapes up. How about you?
I have to announce my allegiance because I'm a supporter of Comptroller Peter Franchot for governor. Known Peter for a very long time, back from my Young Democrats days when he was a delegate who I absolutely hated in Montgomery County because in the early 90s he was against building the football and baseball stadiums in Baltimore City, which now house the Orioles and the Ravens. But the last 25, 30 years has certainly seen him lead quite a career. I think, and I think his campaign message is to kind of position himself as the everyman candidate, kind of a Maryland's Joe Biden candidate. Been there, done that, had the experience. Very interesting that when you watch Gansler's campaign video, he seems to be wanting to occupy that same space too. And Doug had a very successful 8-year run as Attorney General. People forget that he was actually the Attorney General for 8 years. Had a decent shot at the gubernatorial nomination in 2014. Had a very stupid incident where He went to, as he says, retrieve one of his kids from a party on the beach. So, there's a picture of the Attorney General of Maryland in a party full of underage drinkers. Was not a good look. Didn't really look like he was mature enough to be the governor, and wound up losing in the primary in the Anthony Brown race in 2014.
Will Solo Cup be endorsing him in this election?
What's that?
Will the company that makes Solo Cups be endorsing Gensler in this election cycle?
You know what I just saw is reusable Solo Cups, aluminum Solo Cups, and I do apologize because a plane was flying right overhead. Flyways into BWI over Columbia are a thing out here, what is very interesting is that some of the or at least one major advisor to Gensler was also one of the main political people behind Peter Francho's office, and then this person recently left Francho's employment in the fall and is now working for Mr. Gensler. Rush Baker seemed to have been the neck and neck contender with Kevin Kamenetz, with Ben Jealous running third in the 2018 race before Kamenetz passed away. And Jealous's strength was obviously stronger than the polls were letting on, because Baker seemed to have been the leading candidate going into the primary. So I think he's going to be a formidable candidate. Also, I hate to say it, I think he's going to be the block to an also Brooks running, although she shouldn't be. Meanwhile, also of note, Congressman Anthony Brown, the 2014 nominee, and Ben Jealous, the 2018 nominee, have mentioned that they will not be seeking the gubernatorial nomination. Tom Perez is a wild card. Outside of his home district and his home county in Montgomery, I'm not sure what statewide bridges he's been building. I'm not sure there's that enthusiasm that's out there. And I'm thinking especially in the areas where a candidate's going to have to do well to not just win the primary, but win the general. Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, to say nothing of the more liberal big three of Baltimore City, Montgomery, and Prince George's County. I don't see how Perez is going to pull it up. And I appreciate what you say about John King. He seems to be a very interesting candidate. Unless there are several major gaffes, I'm not sure that I see any of those second tier candidates catching fire. But we have a long way to go. We haven't yet.
So not on the Jane train.
The Jane train?
Trademark. Trademark.
What is that? The Lonnie Jane train. Well, I want to have him on the podcast. He needs to come. You need these candidates will have to start to be invited. Want to see who shows themselves. Peter Francho, incidentally, former guest on this podcast.
Yep, exactly.
What make you of the switching sides, as it were? What make you of the Kelly Schultz v. Michael Steele potential combat on the Republican side? I find it fairly, I guess I'll lead off because I'll find it fairly interesting. So Steele was the lieutenant governor under Bob Ehrlich. At the time, the Bob Ehrlich and his ilk were seen as the gold standard of Republican governors, and also in the country. Back when there were only like 20 Republican governors, now I think there's 31, and also was seen as fairly conservative. But that was all before Trump and before Hogan, and so now we have Kelly Schultz, who cuts an image and projects an image that fits into this Kristi Noem, Sarah Palin type of conservative, working mom who, can be the pit bull with lipstick, to turn a phrase. And not for nothing. I mean, she has a fair amount of executive experience. But my question about her candidacy is, what side of the party is she tacking towards? Is she tacking towards the Hogan side, or is she tacking towards the Trump side? Because that's kind of how I see the Republican Party in the state of Maryland. You're either a Hogan Republican or you're a Trump Republican. And to be quite honest, I think Hogan, although he still enjoys very high favorability ratings in this state, I think a lot of that favorability is amongst Democrats and independents, and if anything, maybe waning with Republicans. At least if I follow social media correctly and listen to all the comments that are blasting the hell out of Hogan for making our kids wear masks in schools, which seems to be a cause celeb amongst Republican members of the General Assembly.
Yeah, it's I do think that that Schulz's straddling of the wings of the party. I think it makes some political sense. Why not try to have it both ways if you can, particularly as it might crowd out anyone else. Now, granted, at least she's trying to have a presence in both camps, whereas Michael Steele is doing his own thing, and the only reason I see Michael Steele being noteworthy next year is if he decides to run as an independent. I just don't see Michael Steele doing well in today's Maryland Republican Party. It really feels like it would be like a not necessarily a 2-to-1 drubbing, but that Schulz would fairly readily defeat Steele, despite the fact Steele is a decent campaigner, got a good presence, but I just don't think the Republican Party that he knew when he was first elected lieutenant governor is still here anymore.
It would be an ignominious end, would it not? Worse so than his senatorial candidacy against Ben Cardin when Cardin was first elected. And I guess I would have to give it a coin flip as to whether or not he even enters the race. And, what do we know? We know that Barry Glassman, the Harford County executive, is not running for governor. Lieutenant Governor Rutherford's not running for governor. Andy Harris is not running for governor. So the field would open up, and Republicans are known for their party discipline, so to speak. So I would have to wonder if Schulz just doesn't wind up having a walkthrough.
Well, and that's into and of course we haven't referenced our favorite perennial candidate running for governor this time around. I was just talking about. I keep saying Fiker, but
Robin Ficker.
I will say Fiker today.
For governor. Oh my God, we went 12 minutes into this podcast or so, and we haven't even mentioned Robin Ficker. That's why I have to post this on Barry O'Connell's group later. Mention Robin Ficker. He of the Washington Bullets heckling and the 2-cent sales tax cut.
Mm-hmm. Taking a lot of pictures with folks in Ocean City last I saw, but as far as how that translates into into a percentage of the electorate, it just feels as though that Schulz is just, head and shoulders over the other options, which again has me concerned that we don't have necessarily the best candidate to face off against her in a general election. As unrealistic as it may seem, that there's what do you think? There's maybe at least a 1 in 3 chance that a 2-term Hogan administration is succeeded by a Schulz administration. So that can be a little bit unnerving because I don't think we've seen the ideal candidate emerge yet. Now maybe the field evolves as it is, and we'll see someone who demonstrates with a degree of confidence that they can run statewide. But I'd be really curious to see how that shapes up.
Well, and I would probably take your 1 in 3. That definitely is an at least. I would actually give it a between 40 to 45% chance. Hogan has not had much in the way of coattails witnessed the 2018 election and the failure of Republicans to stop a veto-proof state Senate. But he does have state redistricting on his side, which will throw more conservative votes into what had been Democratic districts. And I think if he has any coattails, especially as he mulls a run for president, it kind of has to be to get his own successor, who he favors, elected governor behind him. I mean, not that this presidential campaign wasn't problematic from the start in 2016, but when former Governor O'Malley ran for president in 2016, I remember a very early criticism was, oh yeah, and he didn't even get his handpicked successor elected behind him when he stepped down. How good of a governor was he? So, I mean, I would expect that whatever's left of Hogan's political influence, his capital is going to get burned on Kelly Schultz.
Yeah. That sounds about right, actually.
So, issue 2. Mm-hmm. They only look like they're waiting for 2026. So, Jason mentioned before, Angelo also Brooks, one of the extremely promising crop of freshman county executives who got elected in the state of Maryland in 2018. Amongst those, Anne Arundel County Executive Stuart Pittman, who I believe, and it's an update since the pre-show, Jason, has said he's running for re-election. Right. But also notably, John Olszewski in Baltimore County, and this week, our very own Calvin Ball in Howard County announced that they too are running for re-election. So it looks like, unless some sudden change of heart by also Brooks, all of the freshmen county executives are staying put. Focusing pretty much on the Ball and Olszewski races. Are they making the right move, and what are their chances as they seek a second term in their respective counties?
Well, as we all know, Calvin Ball is definitely facing a significant challenge from a Mr. Slow Growth Dunbar, who clearly will defeat him by 90 to 10. No.
Did he legally change his name to Slow Growth Dunbar? Did he be American Joe Metashevsky and become Slow Growth Dunbar? Did he do a World Be Free and become Slow Growth Dunbar? I want to know.
Well, how much did Chuck Finley try to bribe Vida Blue to change his first name to True? Was it like $1,000?
But I didn't know that happened. He already had Vida on the back of his jersey,
which is awesome.
Like an 8-year-old who's in their last year of T-ball.
Oh God! But I'll do Calvin first, because I've seen some ridiculous conversations about this on social media. I think it was the Better Howard something or other group that decided to chime in that, or it might have been a repost from the Howard County Republicans, because those groups seem to cross-pollinate quite a bit. It was like, oh, obviously, Ball blew his chance of being Francho's running mate, so as if this is some sort of consolation prize getting to run for re-election. So it was a ridiculous statement. It was fairly typical of what you see in that group. Johnny O's, I haven't really heard as much from Baltimore County regarding the announcement. So I'm going to pass that back to you for your take on the initial feedback.
Well, I'll take all three of them. I think as far as who has the hardest road to toe in terms of getting reelected between Pittman and Olszewski and Ball, I think it's clearly Pittman.
Pittman, yeah.
It was an upset win over Steve Shue, who many people had already penciled in as, the gubernatorial nominee this time around for the Republican Party. And, he has done a lot to, he has pulled Anne Arundel County to the left. Is it too far left? for, say, South County, or the harder core blue collar folks in North County who did reelect a Democratic council member. But, these are also, the working class white people who support Trump. Time will tell. But I have not seen an extremely strong candidate come up against him. And I should say, when I say an extremely strong candidate, yes, I'm looking at this with my blue glasses, Jason. I'm looking at a more moderate type of candidate. And if Hogan is a moderate, which I really don't think he is, I'm looking for that type of person to run for Anne Arundel County Executive. Anne Arundel County has one of the craziest Republican parties in the state of Maryland. Howard and Cecil and Hartford and Carroll, are all right up there. But Anne Arundel County, I mean, these are, another group that gives away guns on, assault weapon, assault rifle raffles and this sort of nonsense. And I have several good friends, including one very close friend of mine who are Anne Arundel County Republicans, and even, a good friend who ran for county council as a Republican in Anne Arundel County. And I know that doesn't necessarily define those individuals, but as a group, they are what their record says they are. So, I have to imagine that the fate of Mr. Pittman will probably very closely, mirror what the fate is of the national electorate in 22. Turning to Olszewski, I think he has having cut his political teeth in Dundalk and in the east side of Baltimore County, I think he gets a considerable advantage. I don't really see anything derailing his currency in terms of running for reelection. A lot of the speculation about him running for governor was predicated on the fact that he might not think that he would win reelection. I never really was of that belief, but whether if there is a Republican administration in 22, I think he shoots right to the front of candidates to be the Democratic nominee in 26. And then that brings us to Calvin Ball, the Howard County executive. I think that if there is a primary challenger to Mr. Ball, to Calvin, I think it's to the left. I certainly don't think it's to the right. So I think, slow growth could probably just take a seat. There was a time in which I thought one of the two county council members who are not of the 3-2 voting majority in many decisions in Howard County politics, those being Deb Jung in the 4th district or Liz Walsh in the 1st district. There was a time I thought one of the two of them would be running in the primary. I don't think that now. I don't see that. There might be somebody who files to run, but I don't see that being a serious candidate. And then, of course, yes, slow growth is already out there making his name known. And then in the general election, I know there's a gentleman who was a former Hogan appointee. I believe he's a Korean American or Chinese American gentleman. And I hate to say it, but I am blanking on his name now. So forgive me out there in listener and viewer land, although I know you won't.
It's Jimmy, isn't it? What is it?
I knew it was Jimmy, but I cannot remember his last name. And I did not want to say Mr. Jimmy because that sounds
Unfortunately, I'm having the same moment. I was thinking Ree, but that could be wrong.
It might be Ree. But he was a Hogan appointee. He was in the cabinet, and he's apparently planning on running. There's some guy who is not just a potential candidate, but a not only a perennial candidate, but a perennial withdrawer from office named Darren Villas, who I guess is running on the Republican side. I guess he filed on the Republican side. So I don't see there to be a serious candidate. And even though the Howard County Republican Party is crazier than a box of wet cats, I also they're also not stupid. And if their prize is to get the governor's seat back, they will work to depress turnout in certain Democratic voting counties. And I have a feeling that that might be what they do in Howard County. Not run a serious Republican candidate for county executive. This has been done before when they ran Steve Adler for against Ken Ullman for Ken Ullman's reelection, when there was no shortage of notable Republicans, current and past office holders who could have run, or people who would wind up holding office in the Republican Party who could have run against Ken Ullman but didn't. But that was an effort to try to keep Martin O'Malley from getting elected governor. So I kind of see that as unfolding the same way here. I think Ball wins re-election, which is and I say that with much greater certainty than I thought a year ago.
Oh, and I did want to add the caveat. I want to say I recently read that Jimmy Ree, who we were referring to earlier, who is the Maryland Special Secretary of Small, Minority, and Women Business Affairs in the Hogan administration. I believe he was recently appointed to was it the Economic Development Authority in Howard County?
Yes.
Which I think should effectively sideline him, I'm assuming, from seeking elective office.
Well, then there are other Republican candidates who can run for office, right? And Republican office holders. I mean, there's the former council member from District 5, Greg Fox. I have mentioned before the former Board of Education candidate, Suzanne Palmer, who, at least as of my last knowing, was not a registered Republican. There is someone who I am not going to name, who I know you know who I'm talking about, who is a former county council candidate from District 4, who, as we had posited on an earlier edition of this very podcast, could be attempting to increase her profile so that she becomes the Howard County version of Kim Klacik. And I emphasize the first name for a reason. There are people, and oh my goodness, if it's that last person, oh, Katie, bar the door.
It won't be boring.
That is.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna reemphasize. I mean, that's for sure. That person was actually in the news this week, but that was not covered by many other local news outlets. Although I do credit, since I know they watch and listen, the Scotty blog for giving me the heads up as to the future, as to the next steps of that First Amendment case in which that individual was involved. And the outcome, incidentally, Jason, I know I'm diverging a little bit, but a written opinion shall be issued.
And what's that expected? What, in the next 3-4 weeks, something like that?
Something like that in the not too distant future.
Mm-hmm. It'll be fun to see if the First Amendment still exists in Howard County.
I think it does. I think it does. I do not think we have become that country in duck soup of Bulgaria. Who knows duck soup? Who knows the Marx Brothers?
Was that the
Marx Brothers there were? There were 5.
Was that the one where Groucho played Rufus T. Firefly?
The Hitler clone? I think so.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So
their jokes still hold up. I actually watched a clip the other day when he called for help, and they cut to all this stock footage of cavalries and animals stampeding across the plains.
That never gets old. And then Mel Brooks used that crap 40 years later in Blazing Saddles. It was amazing. Issue 3, Jason. Shut up already. I don't know if you can hear behind me, but cicadas have been measured in Howard County by this correspondent at a sound of up to 95 decibels, which is equivalent to a loud conversation, or when Bill forgets how to use his microphone on the podcast. Jason, what have been your greatest cicada memories as we reach what looks like to be the halfway point of visitation / infestation by Brood X 2021 edition?
Yeah, it does appear that we're at peak cicada right now. It's fucking disgusting. For those of you unaware, I actually have a colleague of mine.
Warning language.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I got a colleague of mine who actually lives not that far away, but has reported. I don't want to disclose, where she resides, but there's a significant body of water nearby. Apparently, that's doing a very good job of lessening the infestation. But yeah, the noise it definitely permeates through walls. I can report that. I'm glad they sort of start up, after the sun rises, which is nice. But yeah, I haven't embraced cicada fever like some folks have. I haven't tried eating one. So by the shake of your head, I'm assuming that means you would not eat a cicada if offered.
No, I would not eat a cicada if offered. I do have a very close friend who on Facebook, he commemorated his and memorialized his digging up of cicadas, soaking them in vinegar for 6 hours, breading them and frying them, and then eating them with a chipotle sauce of his own creation. And he did report that they were quite tasty. Peanutty, I believe, was the report. And then earlier today, an individual of an animal nature of your acquaintance, Mr. Crush Woodcock, was observed in this very domicile eating a cicada, eating it alive, and it did not go down in one bite. It was kind of Jurassic Park looking, to be quite honest, and kind of turned my stomach. So no, I don't see any cicada eating in my future, and I have to admit, I'm happy that it's not in yours either.
Well, I'm glad to hear there was a real back to nature sort of moment in the Woodcock household.
Well, it was, because Crush doesn't catch a damn thing else. Like yesterday, he caught and ate 2 flies, and I guess today, when I was outside reading, I guess I brought in a hitchhiker, and it fell off on the carpet, and he pounced, and the rest is history. I have to say, having been here 17 years ago, this seems to be a lot more. It seems to be louder. I mean, maybe it's just, it's not like the good old days, Sonny, sort of behavior going on, but this really seems to be a lot more intense. I don't know why. It was very nice those 2 days over Memorial Day weekend when it was in the 50s. We didn't hear them. But yesterday and today, when it was 95, oh, Lordy. And then on Monday, it's supposed to be that hot again. And apparently by late July, this is all supposed to be gone. But also 17 years ago, I have to say, I do remember this extending into August. So I think we'll just have to see. As of last week, I still saw them crawling out of the dirt. But like originally, the original cicadas that came up earlier this spring were like Don Knotts cicadas. They were scrawny. They would walk across the deck and fall over, and then they couldn't get up.
They would always drop the gun when they were trying to hold it.
Yeah, they needed some sort of assistance. Now these little suckers that are coming out are like the friggin' Hulk. They're like friggin', the mountain from Game of Thrones coming out of here. And I don't even watch Game of Thrones. But these things are friggin' looking like, they've got like the Bullworker, that thing from the 70s infomercials going. I mean, they're beefy, and I'm not sure. I mean, my God, if they're formidable. I'm kind of ready for them to be done. Thank God they don't carry a virus.
Oh, at least not that we know of. So, but you're in other words, you're reporting, and I think this is the first to report it. You're seeing alien from predator-sized cicadas in Columbia, Maryland.
You know what? We can go with that, and see how much view rate that gets. Click. It's all about the click throughs. But I'm just gonna say beefier cicadas. Maybe a little bit larger in girth. Using cigars as a frame of reference. Less, not so much the cigarillo, but much more a Corona.
Okay. So are we talking early 90s Bonds or late 90s Barry Bonds?
We're definitely talking late 90s. Yeah, it is. That is a perfect analogy. I mean, the head size is bigger. I mean, it is very much a Barry Bonds type of experience here. And then plus these new ones seem to be just meaner. I mean, they make noises. You try to pick them up and move them, and they go at you instead of do their sound like they're hearing. Like they get pissed. You poke them with your finger, and as they're walking up your arm, and they go. I don't understand what that is. Well, but I think it's telling you that it's mad at you. I don't care. I just flick it off.
I guess. Well, I guess they have plans, and we're somehow interrupting them.
Well, don't crawl up my damn arm. I don't want you up my arm, cicada. I don't care what you do. I don't want cicadas up my arm, Jason. America, damn it.
And I got an idea for a new T-shirt coming straight from...
cicadas up my arm, Jason. Well, on a much more serious note, we have had a fun podcast tonight, but we do have a fourth topic, which was unadvertised to you, the listener and or viewer. And so I would like to turn the floor over to my intrepid co-host for an announcement.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'll keep this very brief, other than to say that those people who know me well, are probably aware that I've been dealing with issues related to anxiety and depression for a fairly long time. And I have to say, unfortunately, that things have gotten, worse in their own special sort of way. And and it's, I'm just trying to pull my thoughts together. It's leading to a lot of fatigue, and even my speech patterns, my thoughts tend to be a little bit, disconnected more than I would like them to be. So something is clearly going on. So reflecting upon what Naomi Osaka did courageously, and decided to focus more on her mental health, I'm going to try to do the same. Which of course has ramifications as far as work and non-work life, and including the podcast. So I'm going to be taking a little hiatus from the podcast as I sort of figure out what works best for me as far as getting my head back together in a way that makes things a bit more manageable, where I don't feel continuously exhausted and feeling an array of emotions all at once. So with that, I'll be taking a break, but I will be back, and hopefully very, very soon.
So first off, thank you, brother. That was very well put. And most of all, I appreciate your honesty and your willingness to share your vulnerability with us. That is awesome. And I think it's a terrific thing in this day and age when somebody can admit in a public forum that, I need to do some time for me, and that's cool. Of course the seat is here for you. You know, I
You're not going to be hiring Artie Lang next week?
Hashtag joke man.
Hey, what's going on?
But, yeah, 3 people. No, not even 3 people got that. Right? But of course, the seat is here for you. May bring in some Jesse or Roscoe types to throw to some left-handed batters. In the meantime, and there will be new content on Thursday, folks, and it will be a solo show. So I'm sure there's about 50 people out there who just went, oh, fuck. I'm very proud of the thing that we do. We don't do this podcast to promote a business, to promote a company. We don't get any money. We don't get a space, that's given to us from some entity, to do a show. Everything we do is on our own sweat. And it's because we feel like we're 2 pretty smart guys who know a lot about politics and civic life and community affairs. And we want to bring you how we see things. And, if we can't do our level best effort, and we can do something that we think you would be interested in watching or listening to, we're not going to do that. So, I thank you. I looked up earlier today. We've done about 70 shows together, which are awesome. Wow. But you absolutely do have to come back, and I know you will.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have already put plans in place for our 2-year anniversary of doing this thing together come September.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. What is that, you might wonder? I'm not going to tell you. It is something you and I have talked about, plus some. I'll just leave that.
All right.
So that's going on, and Godspeed. Of course, I know you're a bud. We will be in touch, right. And we'll have fun talking about all this nonsense off camera for a while. That sounds like a blast.
Definitely, absolutely, Bill.
All right. Well, everybody, we are now at the top of the hour, 7 o'clock. We now see, as you saw my face, you can see the last golden rays of the sun start to decline in the western sky from Howard County. And it's time for me to go vote somebody off the island. So for Jason Boone, my name is Bill Woodcock, and you have been watching and or listening. You should do both, really, to another episode of Forward Maryland. I'll be back at you on Thursday, kids. Until then, take care. Have a great night.